In this lesson we move on to balanced whole body unified force exercise 4. But before I talk about that, there are a couple of things that I want to share with Yiquan and Zhanzhuang friends about my experiences recently with standing. So in the last video I forgot to say, because I always forget loads of things that I mean to say, and that's always inevitable because if you're standing and training all the time, something happens, and then when you're training with people, you talk about it, but you forget about it because you've moved on to the next day's training. But I meant to say, for the last video, when I filmed that, I was feeling really down. And, well, it's not surprising, is it? I think everything that's going on in the world, everyone's feeling a bit down at the moment, but I was feeling really down. Out for a walk with the dog, I was thinking, well, I feel really depressed. But the change in my mood after doing that standing was astonishing, and it wasn't just like, oh wow, I'm by the river, I'm cheering up a bit. There was a absolutely palpable physical change in my mental states, as if something negative had been released and it had been replaced by something incredibly positive, like a buzz, and that really lasted for a few days after that. That amazingly positive psychological benefit of standing is something that we hear talked about all too little, and I think it can get blotted out sometimes by the other discussions around standing and the interesting things that it can do in terms of well-being and martial arts practice. And then filming for the exercise that we're going to look at today, I experienced something incredibly rare, one of the rarest phenomenon in standing, which is time flicker. And this is where, well, I'm describing it, but I've certainly never experienced it before. That's why I'm excited to tell people about it. I've heard it talked about, but I've never experienced it myself until I did this exercise today. And this is an experience where your sense of linear time changes, and it changes to a kind of strobe effect, like a flickering effect, like you're in and out of time, but shifting like in split seconds, in and out, in and out, in and out of time, but not in a way that was disorienting. It wasn't like I was out of control. It wasn't frightening. I was totally present. I was totally in control, like I was on top of the experience. I was totally in control of the moments and I was fully experiencing it, but my sense of time was flickering, like stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. I don't know how long that went on for, by definition, because it was messing with my sense of time, but it was an astonishing experience, so that's an amazing thing to report. There's always things happening anyway when you do standing, and if you do standing for longer periods, and I've said multiple times, sometimes you can get some amazing experiences just standing for a shorter period, but on the whole, no. These are things that happen when you're standing for longer periods of time, and you will get lots of different experiences. I had lots of different experiences when I was filming this. So the other thing that I had, but I've had this multiple times, and that's time stop, where you have the sense that time just completely stops for a moment. And I also had another experience that, well, I've been trying to get people to work on this experience all the way through these exercises, which is that feeling that you can't feel your body anymore. But I'll talk more about that in a moment. The posture that we're going to do today is a posture that I've done before in the beginner series, and it's just the arms are out in front, palms are facing down, fingers pointing forward, sometimes called mysterious zhuang. And what I want to do with this exercise is try and kill two birds with one stone. So first of all, we're going to extend the exercise that we did last time, where we experienced two vectors simultaneously, and this time we want to experience three vectors simultaneously. And I'm not going to go all the way with this until we're experiencing six vectors simultaneously. That's too much to ask at this stage, and it's not the point of what we're doing. Thank you to those who are following along with this, because the point isn't completely clear at the moment, but it will become clear as we proceed. Suffice to say at the moment that when we come back to exercises, what we'll be doing is moving with balanced whole body unified force. So this is the last zhuang posture I want to use, looking at balanced whole body unified force. Subsequently, we'll move on to looking at unbalanced whole body unified force. We'll talk a bit about health Yiquan before then, but really when we start working with unbalanced whole body unified force, that's when the business end of martial arts training starts to kick in. That's a few videos away yet though. So today, first of all, we're going to use the same visualization that we used last exercise. So remember, that was visualizing a rope that's holding the hands together. You can't move them apart because there's a rope there. And then there's another rope that's tied down to the feet. So that allowed us to visualize two vectors. So we're pulling out to the side, and at the same time, we're pulling up against the rope that's tied down to our feet. And the thing that we're going to add today is just pushing forwards with that. So we're not going to visualize any more ropes. That will start to become too complex as a visualization. But if you imagine that you were tied up like that, your hands were tied, and then there's a rope running from that rope down to your feet, you could pull to the side against the rope, and you could pull up against the rope that's going down to your feet, but you could also push forwards, and the rope that's going down to your feet would resist your attempt to push forwards. So you can imagine if that rope was there, what that would feel like. And that's the feeling that we're going to try and get. And that will be three vectors. So pulling out side to side, pulling up, and pushing forwards. And again, remember, we want to keep this posture completely balanced. That's the entire point of it. It's not easy. I find it quite difficult to do this because normally I always work with unbalanced force, but we want to really focus on keeping the force balanced. So don't twist down your spine axis. So don't have the left hand pushing forward more than the right hand, for example. And don't bend at the qua axis. Just try and keep the whole posture completely balanced. As per usual, relax for 10 minutes. Relax in the posture. Settle into the posture. Spending 10 minutes doing that. Obviously, it's not necessary to do it along with the video as I do it. So do a video for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's very important to lead from the front. So for people to actually see that I am doing the exercises that I recommend to other people, and more importantly, that I can do them, that it is possible. And particularly towards the end of the video, you can see much more clearly that I am working with exactly these visualizations that I'm discussing in the explanation. And that's exactly the same as my philosophy for the fight training and practice. You can see me doing those things in live training, sparring, and so on. Seeing people do these things, whether it's sparring, standing, or other kinds of training, helps people to feel like they're part of a project. And that's exactly how I see it and exactly how I want people to feel. Part of an amazing project. And my coach always used to say, if you're doing standing with other people, it just gives you a little bit of extra impetus. It gives you a little bit of extra something. And if the best we can do is following along with a video, then, well, let's do that. Let's do everything we can positively to promote Yiquan and Zhanzhuang for the benefit of the human race. Which is a very grand ambition. I know, I realised that as soon as I said it. But that's the idea. There is something wonderful here. Let's promote it and let's feel like we're doing something great by being part of it. Now, I said that we want to kill two birds with one stone. So that's the first stone. The second stone is to start to understand the correct feeling of relaxation that we began to talk about in the previous lesson. So let's try an experiment first. So if you put your arms out, remember, I'm always imagining a fully able-bodied person. If people have different challenges, you've got to find ways to adapt. Each one is for everyone, can be adapted to everyone, but I'm always imagining that person when I'm doing these basic videos. So arms out in front, fingers pointing forward, palms facing down, and you don't need to be stood up. I'm doing it in my chair right now. And tense your elbows, tense your elbow joint. Really try and get a feeling of intense tension. As you do that, you can feel the tension all the way through your arm, right into your shoulders, your back, not just your elbows, down your forearms, into your tops of your hands, fingers. Everything is tense. Now try and just tense your elbows. Try and let go of that other tension. It's very difficult to do that, particularly tension in the shoulders. If you let your hands go floppy, you can kind of let that go a little bit, but if you try and keep the fingers pointing forward, it's hard to do that because you need some tension to keep them pointing forward. And the overall idea is that when we do something like that, a task as simple as just tense one joint, it's amazing how much other muscle use starts getting involved with that. There is something that I'll talk about another time, and it's something that I've started to talk about. I was going to do a video on it, but I couldn't find a way of doing it that wasn't really negative, and I'm trying to find the right balance where I'm not contributing to this ongoing pathological negativity around the subject of standing. But there is something that we need to talk about in terms of what standing does. And let's put it this way, all this talk about getting into deeper muscles and relaxing those, or relaxing the fascia or connecting to the fascia, or engaging stabilizer muscles, all of these things are red herrings. What we're working with is the whole body. It's in the very name of the thing, whole body unified force. It's all muscles. Nothing happens when you do longer periods of standing where, for example, it feels like some muscles stop being part of the process and other muscles start taking over. For example, stabilizer muscles. Yes, you go into deeper levels of relaxation. You feel muscles relax, often relax multiple times. And I suppose you could describe that in some sense as deeper muscle tissue relaxing, but usually it isn't. It's just your normal muscles that you would use for a task like holding a posture like this. They're just relaxing, and that's just one stage of the process. We know it's the initial stage, but all of your muscles, your whole structure is relaxing to a deeper level. Not muscles on a deeper level, like somehow muscles that are behind the other muscles or something like that. Not stabilizer muscles. All muscles, your whole structure. So when we do a task like this, experiment of tensing your elbow joints, you can really feel that. You can really feel what we're trying to get at, that we're habitually socialized into using too much of our musculature to be efficient. And that will be incredibly negative when we want to use Fa Li, because we need to be able to accelerate very fast in a short space of time to be able to hit. And then we need to be able to tense right at the last moment to transmit force. So that dual posture between relaxation and tension is the key thing that we're after, that we're going to build into our ability to use Fa Li. And we're going to find that standing unfolds into many layers. The first layer of which is to get the relaxation, and then the second layer is to get the right feeling. And we're going to experience the right feeling when we do this exercise today, and that's why we're doing this particular exercise. All the exercises we've done so far have been chosen. There's no fixed methods, but they've been chosen because each of them explains a key point in the chain of understanding. And this one is going to be when our arms are out. After 10 minutes of working with the visualization of 3 vectors, we want to start including a new task, and that is just feeling, just lifting our arms up slightly. So remember, up until this point, we haven't been using any micro movement at all. We've been working on holding the vectors in as still and balanced a posture as possible. Now we want to start introducing micro movements. And the first micro movement we want to do is replicating that thing that we've just done in terms of tensing our elbows, but now we're going to do it the Yiquan way. And it's very interesting how often people say, how will I know if I've got the right feeling? And that's a little bit like saying, how will I know when I felt pain? When you feel pain, you know that it's pain. Similarly, because of the nature of the training itself, you won't have any choice but to feel the correct feeling. The only addendum to this is that if you find standing very difficult and very painful, that will just drown out everything else. That's why we spent so long in the beginner's class working on building up resilience, building up our ability to hold postures for longer. That's why we looked at so much other stuff. Keep ourselves busy, keep ourselves interested. That'll all come back into play later, all that fight training stuff. But the most important thing was building our resilience, our ability to hold postures for longer without it being painful. Well, of course, when you're at your limits, it's going to be painful, but to be able to hold postures for around about half an hour so that you've got enough time to be able to play with the correct feeling and to let those feelings arrive. And the first feeling we want is a deeper sense of relaxation. We should by now have achieved that. So for this exercise, when the second bell goes, that will be 20 minutes in, and assuming that people are not tense, and it's very hard to hold a posture very tense for 20 minutes, I have to say. Assuming that people are nice and relaxed at that point, if you just trigger the movement just to lift your hands, as if you were going to lift your hands up, but you actually only move them like a tiny fraction of an inch. Maybe if someone was looking very closely, they could see your hands just slightly move. Most of it is in your mind. Remember in the beginner series, I talked about that interface between the intention and the physical movement, where two things of completely different quality somehow interact, what we call a dialectical event. So you're just triggering the sense of lifting the hands up. And if you're tense or you're forcing it so you're in pain, you're not going to get the right feeling. But most people, I should think all people, if you're doing 20 minutes, will be at the right level of relaxation. That is, as long as you feel comfortable or comfortable enough at 20 minutes. It's not unbearable. That's why I'm saying we need to be able to do about minimal half an hour for intermediate level. So at 20 minutes, you've still got time to play with the feelings. So as you trigger that movement, partially in your mind, partially it's physical. It's almost like you can't tell which is it. Is it visualization? And that's very important because later on you'll be able to visualize this feeling without doing it, without actually doing anything with your body. And that's when you start to realize how much of this is in the mind. But you'll get the feeling then like there's some kind of resistance. You'll still feel different parts of your body, but it will become isolated more. So the elbow joint, the tops of your hands, particularly the shoulders, you get like that feeling that I've talked about, that you're inside like a plaster cast so you can move slightly. But it's much more than that. It's a physical feeling, like a rush, almost like someone had put water in an intravenous drip into those parts of your body, and you just feel it pulse through as you just trigger the movement to lift your hands. You feel it pulse through, and you can feel intently the joints, and you can feel the sinews down your arm, and all around that, like it's not quite a tingling, but like a kind of rush feeling. Very difficult to describe feeling, but you'll know it when you feel it, and it's not the same as tension. And the more you relax, the more you get this intense feeling that there's something resisting there, but it's a physical feeling, like, well, the closest I can describe it is like someone had injected water into you, and you just feel it for a split second as you tense. And you'll certainly feel something on the backs of your hands, like there's something resisting there. And this is the feeling that later on you move into Shi Li, that you just actually move, and you hold that feeling and move with it. And that then links into how we use structural whole body interconnectivity, how we use Fa Li, because we need to relax and then hit the lock point. Well, we've looked at all of that in the beginner series. We're going to come back to looking at it all again. It's enough to say at this point that this is the training method. It moves step by step. And when we come into looking at how it moves into Fa Li, you'll see that really this is just the same feeling. This is why we need to be able to have that little bit of give, that relax into the lock point, because that's all we're doing, relaxing into the lock point. And we're going to make that movement bigger, and we're going to make it faster. And eventually you're going to be able to hit with it. That's enough to say about the posture and the visualization. I recommend always at this stage you should be trying to do it for about 30 minutes. It doesn't necessarily ruin the posture or anything like that. If you just stop and shake your hands off or something like that, that's absolutely fine. But ideally be working up to being able to hold these postures for around about 30 minutes. I do about 50 minutes in the video, which is more than we need for intermediate level, but if you can do that, that's absolutely fantastic. Half an hour is our overall goal. At about the, I don't know, about the 30-minute point, some insect began biting into the underside of my arm, which was infuriating, began sucking my blood out, and it made me think of my coach telling a story of when he was a boy in China and he's doing standing with all the rest of the class, and he didn't know the English word for insect, but he was miming with his finger the action of an insect sucking the blood out of his arm, and he said, well, we didn't dare move from the posture, you know, their teacher was so strict. Made me think of that, so I toughed it out, but that was incredibly infuriating. In about 45 minutes I had to just have a little look, is that bug still there, because it was driving me mad. Wasn't there, it had gone, it had done the damage by then, it had gone with its loot of my blood, but these things happen. Also, the dog has worked out that I put lots of treats around me, so he's just finding all the treats in one or two goes, so I need to come up with a new plan. And also, on the subject of the dog, he barks a lot, which obviously doesn't bother me when I'm there, but it ruins the zen of a video, so I do edit the sound. I cut out his barking and just copy and paste a bit of the sound from where he's not barking, but obviously the video of me actually standing isn't edited in any way. Also, we're quite near the airport, so there's always planes going over. There's no quiet place. In any case, give it a go, give it a try. Oh, there's one more thing that I wanted to talk about that I experienced that I really got really good feelings for in this particular exercise. That's the idea that I've been talking about in the previous video of feeling like your body isn't there. So this is something to try. If you're at that point where you're feeling like, wow, this is quite, I don't think I can do it much longer, my arms are really aching. This is something that you can only get when you've got fully balanced whole body force, or your posture is fully balanced, let's put it that way. Try and just feel like your posture is completely balanced and get a feeling like your arms disappear, and when they disappear, the pain disappears with them. It's very difficult to hold for longer periods. Even just to hold it for a few seconds is incredibly difficult because the body has natural movement. It will twitch, it will shift its balance imperceptibly, and when that happens you get the feeling that we're actually after, the feeling of skewing the posture, the feeling that I've just described that we're going for in that exercise where we're imagining lifting our hands up. If you can get that, that's absolutely fantastic, and it's a bit of a mind-blowing experience as well. Just for a few seconds, if you can just get the whole body and just hold it in absolute stillness, completely balanced with no skewing whatsoever, you can feel like your body disappears and the pain disappears with it. Then there'll just be a slight twist in your posture, and then you'll get a very intense feeling, which is the feeling of whole body interconnected force. That's what we're going to work on. That's what we're going to move into working on, and using that deliberately. And the essence of the exercises that we've done so far is to kind of come at this the other way, to experience it in a way that you can't help but experience it. Because if you try to hold the body in complete balance, your body will nevertheless just slightly skew itself, just naturally, randomly, spasm, little bit of loss of balance, and you will feel the correct feeling and you'll know that's what it is. Then when we come to do it deliberately, it will be a lot easier to do it. That's it. Enjoy the exercise.